Hey, folks. We're going to continue on our march through different development streams that I'm doing on my day off. President's Day here in the United States. Just give me a hot second here to punch my signal across the internet. Punch my signal. There we go. Okay, that sounds like it's sounding good. I just need to... give me a second. Mana options for martial classes. I just need to hit Discord like a dozen times. While you're waiting for me to get things up and running, like, subscribe, jump over to Twitter so you can get an eye on when I'm streaming stuff. And I will get up and running here in about 7 clicks. So what we're going to do is we're going to this is our first look at the martial powers book that I've been talking about for quite a while on the Discord channels for Indestructible Boys, Designosphere, as well as Dice Try and Dungeoneers Pack and Classes and Constructs with Trevor's channel. This is going to be our first look at what I've been working on, and I'm just going to chew on stuff that needs to get chewed on, like I do. And as this project's still pretty far down in my work queue, but it is something that's in development that when I want to take a break, I do it. So it's a book of spell point or martial powers, mana point expenditure for martial classes to trigger various instant and sustained effects. If you're an MTG fan, you're going to recognize a lot of this language because an instant effect is something that happens in the moment immediately, and not like in Dungeons and Dragons you have instantaneous spells that take an action to cast and the effect happens immediately and then it's expended. A lot of these abilities are split up into here. Let me go ahead and just dance over here and take a look at the document here real quick. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and it's all still like a hot mess. So forgive the disorganization. I'm still pulling pieces together. But there are 5 folks that are on Indestructible Boys Discord. Maybe know some of what I'm talking about already because I talk about it occasionally. But there's 5 different studies of powers. There's exploits, which are things that generally manipulate D20 die rolls, targeting options, movement options, things that aren't their own action unto themselves, but modify the things that occur during action segments. There is actions, which are generally standalone bonus actions or standard actions that you spend mana to trigger that effect using a bonus action. Like for example, martial maneuvers. Like the way that the Battle Masters maneuvers are written in the Dungeon Masters would qualify as studies of action with the martial mana system, the martial power system. Reactions are separate categories unto themselves. These are things that happen in response to events occurring around you. You spend mana, you can do the thing. The other category is strikes. This is like it's very similar to Eldritch Smite or Paladin Smite in that when you hit, it's an on-hit effect. So when you hit, you spend mana and you thus get to do blank. And then the 1, 2, 3, and then the other thing is sustained powers. These are things that you trigger as a bonus action that you have to maintain concentration to sustain. And if anyone's familiar with the here, I'll take you to it. If anyone's familiar with my DMsGuild work, and you've seen the Eldritch sorry, not Elders, the Elemental Key project that I published recently. Well, I'm just going to show you this real quick so you can see what I'm talking about, because this was the pilot publication for martial powers in general. Scrolling down, let's get to the mechanics of beep, 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 tap on tap burn mechanics, variant constant durations. There's instant effects and there's sustained effects. When you sustain something, you tap the mana, and that in the level of the power or spell equals the amount of mana that you have to tap. And so when you tap it, that increases the DC of your concentration check. So higher level spells are more difficult to pass a saving throw to maintain concentration on, but you're also higher levels, so you have better saving throws in general. But intelligence might be your dump stat. So if somebody hits you with an intelligence themed spell effect or trap effect, chances are you're going to lose your mana, and you're going to lose your sustained abilities. So what we have in this system is locking key. What locking key does is, instead of just tapping the mana, it gets locked, so you don't have to maintain concentration on it anymore, but it reduces your maximum spell level. So if you're a 17th level ranger and you lock Swift Quiver, you can't lose concentration on it, but your effective casting maximum casting level is reduced to 0. If you had cantrips, you could cast them because they are a 0 mana cost, but the Rangers don't have cantrips, so screw you, Oofus. Everything in the Martial Powers book also requires at least minimal mana expenditure. So if you end up locking a 5 mana sustained power, then you are basically saying, all I'm going to do with my mana right now is guarantee that I can do this thing for as long as I want, and I'm going to lose access to any other power that I have. If I only want to tap it, then if I get hit with any kind of saving throw or anytime I take damage, my DC is going to be 15. If Wisdom is my dump stat and I only got like a +2 to my roll, or if I have a +3, or like if I have a -3 to my roll, then a DC 15 is going to be torturous. Most likely you're going to lose it, and you don't get a lot of mana at all. So locking stuff down to mitigate risk while limiting your options while doing so is a fun game mechanic that's been active at my table for a while, and it works really well. It's a low risk, high reward, low option gambit in the system. So what we've done is using those basic mechanics. Now check out this book. Be welcome. The whole book is available for preview, by the way. It's called Tap on Tap Burn Elemental Key. It's part of the larger core mana, color mana spell points core and Knights and Tricksters bundle. It includes the revised 5 color mana spell list. It has spell point Warlocks, which is already Electrum. Tap and Tap Burn Elemental Key is on its way to Copper already. Core Mechanics and Knights and Tricksters both recently hit Electrum. And then, of course, you got Universal Spell Points. And once Martial Powers is done, it's going to be a good, probably 80-page document that's going to get dropped into this bundle as well. So grab this now, and you'll end up getting like a 25% discount off of buying that. If you don't want to just, look at the free preview, because the whole book is available. This is also being revised right now. I'm updating the core mechanics, but this whole book is available for you to read the entire thing if you want. So certainly be welcome to come through, take a look, click the menu button to go back to the table of contents. I found better ways to structure this book, and I want to explore a landscape format instead of a portrait format. That's like wider instead of taller. I'm really intrigued by that mechanic, but all this stuff is available free for you to look at if you're a mana enthusiast, if you like MTG crossover stuff. This does a ton of work for building out mana mechanics inside of 5e with minimal changes if you want. But the Martial Powers book that we're working on right now is giving mana access. So you could play a Gruul Barbarian or a Rakdos Barbarian or just a straight out of the box like a Boros Fighter And if you take these options, then you basically have something to do with your white and red mana as Baros, or your green and red mana as a Gruul Barbarian. It's not spellcasting. These are on-hit instant effects that specifically do not, like a Barbarian. Like, let me just scroll up here so you can take a look at some of the stuff that we're doing. Like, I'm just going to march through just a couple things because I geek out over it. Barbarian, the Path of Raging Fury. Barbarians are normal, but if you take this subclass, you gain access to martial powers. Here is the progression that you have, level 1 to 20. This is a unique progression that's different from everything else, but it curves just as smoothly. Martial powers start at 3rd level, almost like all the Barbarian, the Monk, the Fighter, and the Rogue. They all gain their archetypes at 3rd level. So martial powers become available at 3rd level, similar to Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters, but it's different in that every 4 levels, at level 3, level 7, 11, 15, and then 19, that is when you gain access to different levels of martial power. And if you're familiar with the Arcane Trickster and the Eldritch Knight, you know that they only get 4th level spells off a spellcasting list, but one of the options in this book is you can mix your spells and your martial powers. Here is the improved unified table for gaining martial powers. Where is it? Power dice, martial mana, hybrid mana, total powers. So you start with 3 powers, then you get 4 powers, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, 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 up to 15. Knights and Tricksters only get 13 spells, but this is going to override that and allow you to have up to 15 options between either spells or martial powers. You can just completely throw spells away if you like. If you were playing an Arcane Trickster, or if you were playing an Eldritch Knight, instead of learning a spell, you could opt to learn one of these powers. But if you were to, like, say, take the martial champion archetype, you don't get any spells. You only get martial powers, and martial powers scale up to 5th level. If you were to be a hybrid class, which is either the Artificer, Paladin, or Ranger, they're all hybrid classes. They gain spells at the Artificer gets spells at 1st level, but 2nd level, 5th level you get 2nd level spells, 9th level you get 3rd level spells, 13th you get 4th level spells, and then 17th you get 5th level spells. But the martial power system, again, it's 3rd level is 1st, 7th level is 2nd, 11th level is 3rd, etc., up to 19th at 5th. So if you're playing a Ranger, you can mix in martial powers with your spells if you want. You'll get your spells at 17th level, but you won't be able to get you won't be able to get 5th level martial powers until 19th level. Furthermore, one of the things that we're doing with this is that multi-classing is ubiquitous. So if you're taking, say, 3 levels of Ranger and 4 levels of Fighter, Martial Champion, then you have 7 levels worth of martial studies. So that is going to, at 7th level, that would mean that you would have a total of 6 martial powers. That could be up to 2nd level. You would then blend your mana. You add your mana separately. So hybrid mana is on a long rest. Let me go ahead and write here. Where's my thing? There. Long. While martial mana is on a short rest. So if you were, like, say, if you were a 4th level fighter martial champion, you would only have 2 martial mana because you don't get a 3rd one until 5th level. But it's short rest, so you get it back every short rest. While a 3rd level ranger would have 5 mana that you get back on a long rest. So your total pool is 7 mana, and then you get 2 back every time you take a short rest, and you get all mana back when you take a long rest. These mechanics were first developed with the spell point Warlock, which I showed you, and the link is down in the doobly-doo there. The way that spell point warlocks are built. You can see its progression here. Key from monks and warlocks have the same spell point progression using my tap on tap burn systems, and that they gain 1 per level. A warlock gets his first spell point at first level and then recharges on a short rest, while a monk gets his 2 key starting at second level, and that'd also be a warlock gets 2 key at second level as well, or 2 pack mana at second level. So what you do is you just add up your different classes. If I had 3 levels of warlock, and say I wanted let's be cheeky, 5 levels of paladin, because I wanted to take Hexblade and Paladin so I could have Eldritch Smite and Divine Smite. That's something you can do in the game. Then you would have a total of 8 mana, or rather you'd have a total of 8 levels between the 2 of them. 5 from the Paladin is 10 mana, and 3 from the Warlock, that's a total of 13 mana. You can get 3 back on a short rest, all of it back on a long rest. It's really simple. But these levels, if you're using martial powers as your base class, they stack. So as you gain levels, you gain higher and higher levels of martial powers. If you throw away your spell point list from Ranger or Paladin and you decide to use just martial powers instead, when you multi-class, you continue gaining martial power levels, and you continue gaining additional powers as you accumulate levels. It doesn't matter what class it is, as long as your total levels stack. So far, the math works out really well. There's no way for you to have a combination in multi-classing that gives you more mana than you would have had if you were just a straight hybrid. Hybrid always has more mana than any combination of classes. Even if you pick Ranger and Paladin, like a third level Paladin Ranger, that should be a 6th level caster, right? That means they have 12, but 3 and 3 is 10. Or third level, they get 5 each. So if you took 3 levels of Paladin and 3 levels of Ranger, you're only getting 10 mana, as opposed to if you just went straight Ranger, you'd have 12. So it's always outscaling you. You're never gaming the system. And full casters don't get this stuff. If you're a wizard, sorry Seymour, you can't do martial powers at all. This is martial classes only. So it draws a line between I am doing a spell casting and I am a martial, and I am using martial powers. You could blend your pools so that you could take just a couple levels of a martial power, and then just like the Sorkadin, you could go 5 or 6 levels of Paladin, and then just go 14 levels in Sorcerer, and have just a truck ton of mana. But you can already do that using spell points from the DMG. You're not gaining anything new from the system by doing that. These are just new options, very similar to Shield or Silvery Barbs. These are all instant. I'm gonna burn my mana, almost like meta magic or like sorcerer class features, in that you're going to burn sorcery points and it's gone, and you're gonna have to wait to get them back. So the mechanical balance is already inside of the system, and I've already over the past 2 years built out all the conversion mechanics to be able to use color mana with this 1-to-1 ratio system. It works great. But that's just the walkthrough. As a side note, Warlocks aren't all that. Warlocks don't use this power progression. They have invocations. So what happens is, instead of an invocation from one of the published source books, you can choose a martial power instead. So it's like you don't get to stack up on 15 spells as a Warlock and just have a ton of martial powers and Magic Arcanum on top of it. No. What you can do, though, is you can swap out invocations. So at best, at 18th level, you can have 8 invocations. That means at 18th level, you can have 8 martial powers, but you won't have access to the 5th level powers until you reach 19th level. They still have to abide by those restrictions. They might get 5th level spells by 9th level because they're a Warlock, but they won't have access to martial powers using invocations They won't have access to 15th until 19th level, just like fighters don't, just like paladins don't. It's all fair structure system. You're going to see a lot more of that, of this scaled progression system with the spell point sorcerer that I've been working on as well on stream on occasion. I've got a ton of projects that are in the works, and most of them don't have priority right now. The Ebron adventure that I'm working on with Andy, that I do morning stream maps for, and occasionally I do text development for adventure design. That's my highest priority right now. And then there's also the in-command mass combat system that Ukulele Bard and I are working on. That's my next priority. But once those things are off my plate, these projects are hot. It's just that I wanted to spend some time talking about them now because people have asked questions about it and it comes up in conversation. I just wanted to do this walkthrough. We're at 3:15. I've got another 45 minutes left. So I've just been doing kind of a strong ramble here, but I want to just look at a couple of these things here. Barbarian Path of Raging Fury. So we know from the progression table here that a Barbarian channeling, starting at 3rd level, you gain the channeling class feature. Charisma is your channeling ability score, which sucks. I know. Channeling DC is 8 plus prof plus charisma bonus. Fury, at 3rd level, you gain 2 Fury points, and you gain 1 additional point every other level with a maximum of 10 at 19th level here. These are which are regained on a short rest. Are regained when you finish a short or long rest period. Martial powers. So, looking at martial powers. Beginning at 3rd level, you gain 3 first level martial powers listed in section 3 below. That jives right here. You choose additional powers as you gain levels up to your maximum channeling level as listed in the martial powers progression table. Furthermore, when you gain a level, you can choose to replace any number of known powers. What I hate the most about D&D is that you're only allowed to change one known power per level. What BS? All the prepared casters can swap out their entire spell set every day, but a known caster can only change it once per level? No. That means that all your known powers, whenever you gain a level, you're still stuck with them until you clear your level, but you can switch them all out. Now, that's just my own homebrew. I think it ought to be canon. I have a sneaking suspicion that when 5.5 comes out in 2024, long after this has been published, we're going to see Wizards actually doing that. I suspect that's a large complaint that they're getting feedback about. So if you agree, definitely shout at them about it often until they get it through their head that they need to be smart. Okay, continuing. Channeling Rage. Okay, here's where Charisma makes more sense. When you choose the path of Martial Fury, Rage gains additional benefits. Martial powers can be channeled while raging. They aren't casting spells. It's channeling mana power. It is a nuance, a semantic, but it is important because barbarians can't cast spells or maintain concentration on them or anything while raging. But channeling is not spell casting. These aren't casting a spell. These are instant trigger effects that you do whenever you perform an action. So fight me over if you want. When you choose the path of Martial Fury, Rage gains additional benefits. Martial powers can be channeled while raging. If you channel a power that can be sustained, it must lock. And now, I said earlier that when you lock a sustained power, you no longer maintain concentration on it, but it reduces your effective level. So if a barbarian rages and triggers or channels a sustained effect, say he's 7th level and he sustains a 1st level channels a 1st level sustained power and locks it, immediately locks when he does so he can now only use 1st level powers while doing so. He could choose, if he knows a 2nd level power, sustained power, he could choose to channel that, but it would immediately lock, and then he can't use any mana. But hold on a minute. Let's look at that more closely. So when you begin a rage, you can trigger a sustained power and lock it as part of the bonus action. So when you rage, you can immediately activate a sustained power. You can immediately trigger or channel a sustained power, and it immediately locks. So you're gaining added value for the bonus action needed to rage. On top of it, you're whatever you've learned. You could have a ton of them. Like, I mean, at third level, you could have 3 of them. You could have 3 sustained effects if you wanted that are all first level, and you can just choose which one you want to lock. As part of the bonus action to begin your rage, you can tap normally if you're not raging, or you could choose to lock if you want, but if you're raging, it automatically locks. Next ability, Furious Power. At third level, while raging, you add your rage bonus to the DC of any power that requires a saving throw. So yes, the Barbarian requires Charisma as your casting stat, but as you gain levels, it starts with a +2, then +3, and then ends with a +4. So you can have your strength and your dexterity strong, and then you can use charisma as a flat stat, and then you can choose to dump your intelligence, or your intelligence is probably the way you want to dump it. So you can stay okay, but you also don't need to choose powers that require saving throws. There's tons of them that don't require it. But if you wanted to, you can go this path. That's very similar to the Rage Mage from 3rd edition. I don't know if you guys played 3E or not, but look it up. Look up 3rd edition Rage Mage. Those things are monsters. Very, very fun. But they were charisma bonus, and they gained rage bonuses to their spellcasting DCs as well. It's super fun. 6th level, Primal Consumption. So at 6th level, as a bonus action, you can sacrifice 1 resting hit die. I don't know if that's the proper term. I'm going to have to look it up. But that's how I normally think about it, like resting hit die. But it's probably just hit die. I'll look up the technical stuff on that and make sure my editor beats me up if I get it wrong. But you can sacrifice a hit die to regain 1 fury up to your max fury limit. Ironically, or perhaps on purpose, at 20th level, you have 20 hit dice. You can only obviously regain 10 at most, but if you're using them every day, you only get back 10 hit dice per day because you only get half your resting hit dice back per day. So if you're using feeding yourself more mana, then you're always going to only have 10 hit dice per day, which curves perfectly with the amount of mana that you have access to. Let's see. Furthermore, when you make a death save, you can burn 1 mana. You can burn 1 point of fury, or you can sacrifice a resting hit die to automatically succeed the roll. You can choose to use this feature after knowing the result of the save. This isn't too far out of curve with other stuff that we see regarding like stabilizing. It's not you automatically win. It's I can pay to not die, but I don't get just to pop up with hit points again immediately, which is a problem that we see with a lot of homebrew involving, well, especially with barbarians. It's broken to say I use this ability, I immediately pass all my saving throws, I'm back on my feet, and I get my saving throw. No, this at best you have to wait your 3 rounds. At worst, you have to spend 3 hit dice for the same result, depending on how you roll. So at 10th level, Brutal Fury. I love this. Brutal Fury at 10th level, when you score a critical hit. Just as a reminder, in case you don't remember, give me a hot second here. Let's go to D&D Beyond, and let's go to the Barbarian. Ninth level, Brutal Critical, beginning at 9th level. You can roll 1 additional weapon damage die when determining the extra damage for a critical hit with a melee attack. This increases to 2 additional dice at 13th and 3 additional dice at 17th level. So let's take a look at how we're manipulating that. Brutal Fury. You see that parallel there? Brutal Critical. Now we have Brutal Fury. Thank you. Thank you very much. At 10th level, when you score a critical hit, you can choose to forego the additional damage die and instead gain a point of temporary fury that can burn immediately to channel a strike power. So you only have 10. Temporary mana is there's in the Magic the Gathering game, there's temporary mana that you can gain, like some card effects, spells, artifacts, enchantment spells grant you temporary mana that you gain until the end of your turn, and when your turn ends, the temporary mana just goes away. So it's additional resources that you get that don't accompany the actual amount of mana, or in this case, fury, that you have in your mana pool. It's just a bonus that you get in the moment. So when you score a critical hit, you can choose to forego the additional damage die and instead gain a point of temporary fury that can burn immediately to channel a strike power. Again, when you hit something, you can then choose, just like Smite, you can choose to burn mana to create an on-hit effect called striking powers. It's the study of strikes. So this can be combined with fury in your pool to channel strike powers up to your max power limit. So let's look at it. At 10th level, you still only have access to second level powers. So if you score a critical hit, you get 1 point for free. You can then spend one of the 5 fury points that you have in your pool to then have the temporary point plus the point from your pool. That's 2 points. You can now channel a second level strike power, and we'll look at these powers down at the bottom. We still have 30 minutes, so once we get done with the Barbarian, we'll just go down and start looking at powers and start playing with those. And then at 14th level, you get 2 dice. 13th and then 17th. This should be at 13th level. Thank you. At 13th level, you can forgo up to 2 additional dice to gain an equal amount of temporary fury points. So that means you can get 2 fury points at 13th level, and at 13th level, you have a total of 3, so that tracks. And at 17th level, you can forgo up to 3 additional damage dice, gain an equal amount of temporary fury points. You get a max fury level. Your max power level at 17 is 4th. So if you score a critical hit, again, there's nothing here that's allowing you to increase your cap. You could potentially take a multi-class with fighter, like champion or something like that, and get an increased crit threat range to get it down to 19. But that's 20th level at that point, that you could use that 3rd level class feature for that subclass of the fighter, plus this 17th level brutal fury. At 20th level, having a crit range of 19 and 20, it's not a big problem. So go right ahead. It's safe. But at 17th level, when you roll a natural 20, you could forgo the 3 damage dice and instead channel powers. Okay, so actually let's do that. Power dice. Oops, I don't have power dice listed here. I need to. Power dice. Here's our power dice. Level 3 is a D8. This is going to sound familiar because it's what we have from the 18th level is D12. This is the same progression that the Battle Master has, the Fighter Battle Master class. This system originally started as if I want to make a Battle Master using 5 color mana, like if I want to have a Boros Battle Master, it made sense to me that, well, let's give him an Eldritch, let's give him an Eldritch Knight spell point pool, and allow him to, instead of learning a spell, you can learn a Battle Master technique. That's one of the changes that you're going to see when I reformat the Knights and Tricksters book. You can learn Battle Master techniques, but of course, you can also use all this stuff. I don't know what's going to come first. The Eldritch Knight rework. It's just reformatting and some new text and swapping out the spell lists, or this. I'm not sure which one's going to have a higher priority, but that's going to be a part of it. You're going to see that. But just so you know, you can do that. Battle Master at 3rd level, 10th level, 12th level, 18th level. These are the same die progressions you get for a superiority die. So that's also what we use for power dice. It curves the same. It was intended to. All the Battle Master, what are they called? Techniques? No, maneuvers. All the Battle Master maneuvers are basically 1 mana costs. So they're all 1st level martial powers. So you can learn 3 of them at 3rd level. That's worse than what I think the Battle Master gets 4. So you're actually better off. You're actually better off as a battle master initially, but this has the flexibility of the mana pool, so you end up ahead. I think like around level 8. I think it breaks in favor of you, but most campaigns are over at that point. So use it if you can. Definitely take advantage of it. So yeah, that's the progression there. So what were we looking at? Oh yeah. We were talking about the brutal fury. So if you're going to ditch out your resting, if you're going to when you're using brutal critical, you would, like, say you're using a two-handed battle axe. It rolls D12 damage. So it would then be your D12 from your battle axe, and then the brutal strikes gives you an additional 3d12 damage at 17th level. And this curves. Well, I mean, at 17th level, you'd only be using a D10, but as soon as you hit 18th level, you'd be doing 4d12 damage. But instead, using this, you would be using a 4th level, and then eventually 5th level martial power instead, and we'll look at those in a minute. I just want to finish this up real quick with you. Destructive power at 14th level, when you dismiss a locked power while raging, you deal force damage equal to the power dice or the fury. You deal damage equal, it's force damage equal to your power die times the amount of fury burned to all creatures within 10 feet. They can do a dex save for half. Dex equals 8 plus rage bonus plus fury burned plus stat. So at what is that, 14th level down here. So your max channel is 3rd. So if you had the thing about locked is you can dismiss a locked spell on your turn, and when you do, it burns your mana. If it's sustained and not locked, you refund the mana. You get it back. As long as you don't lose concentration while you're maintaining concentration on a martial power, you get the mana back. If you lose concentration, it gets burned and it's lost like usual. But if you lock your mana, you can't get it back. But you can, during your turn, just like any spell, you can release it as a non-action during your turn. And if you do, then in this case, it deals, if you're 14th level and it was a 3rd level power that you had locked while you were raging, it doesn't necessarily even have to be while you're, it is specifically while you're raging. So while you're raging, 3rd level power, that's 3d10 damage, and the DC would be 8 plus your rage bonus. At this level, it's a +3, so that's 11. Plus the fury burned, which is another 3 at max 3, so that's 14, plus your stat, which is probably going to be 0. Let's be realistic. So that's going to be a DC 14 to save for half damage against 3d10 force damage to all creatures within 10 feet of you. Basically, when you release your lock, it punches out energy around into anyone around you. And then, of course, you punch out your energy. You can then spend a bonus action to lock another ability, and you could dismiss that too. So you could theoretically lock, release. If you start the round with an ability locked, you can release the lock for 3d10 damage, burn your use your bonus action to lock another 3 points on a sustained ability that's going to benefit you in the moment, and then release it again before your round is over. So you could potentially do 2 waves of 3d10 and then 3d10 again. That's fun. So just mana manipulation and techie game stuff that you can play. That stuff's intended. So you find squirrely stuff like that, chances are I intend you to, because that's kind of how Magic the Gathering works. MTG cards are built to be squirrely, so you can find how different cards can interact with each other to create cooler effects. This is an instance of that squirreliness being converted into the 5e game mechanics. But we still got about 25 some odd minutes before I have my next meeting. And I may be on later on tonight for a late night stream where I'll probably be working on the cemetery text for the cemetery, getting the text figured out. But we're gonna skip past the monk and the paladin and the ranger. We're gonna skip past the rogue. Artificers can infuse martial powers. They're infusions. You can make magic items that use martial powers. That's a huge thing that's built into the martial power system. We were initially looking at sorcery variant using sorcery points for martial powers, but it's not going to work out. So we're going to get rid of that. But we already have Warlock's variant for invoking power, which is using invocations to learn martial powers. The Artificer thing I'm really excited about, because the Artificer itself can learn stuff, and if you know a martial power, you can then infuse that martial power into your gear so that you don't have to worry about channeling it yourself. You can build gear that channels it for you. So you could have like a Warhammer. This is where we're at. We're at channeling powers now. Let's look at how strike abilities work since we're here. So you have an idea of what we're looking at, and then we'll go back and look at some other stuff. Again, these work identical to Smite. So this is a strike power. Corroding Strike. Weapon deals acid or necrotic damage. It's +1 power die per mana burned, channeling this power. So when you hit, like say you're using a Warhammer, and you hit with the Warhammer, and you channel Corroding Strike. Choose either acid or necrotic damage. The weapon damage isn't bludgeoning damage. You can choose to use acid or necrotic damage instead of bludgeoning damage. And on top of that, for every point of mana that you burn with the Corroding Strike, you can deal an extra power die worth of damage. So say you're 14th level, then you'd be able to burn up to 3 dice, 3 mana burning, which would give you 3d10. So you do your Warhammer damage, which is like, I think it's like d12, plus 3d10, either acid or necrotic damage when you hit, plus your strength modifiers and all the other yada yada. That's a common theme. Like Flaming Strike works that way, Freezing Strike works that way, Poisoning Strike works that way. A lot of these things have kickers, though. The Corroding Strike has no kickers to it. Let's see. I think the Psionic Strike weapon deals either force or psychic damage, and +1 power die per mana burn, channeling this power. It's identical to the Corroding Strike. Corroding Strike and Psionic Strike are similar in that they offer you 2 choices of damage that you're going to deal. But all the other ones have like little nuanced kickers to them, like Freezing Strike. Weapon deals cold damage specifically, +1 power die per mana burn, channeling this power, and then the target's movement is halved until the end of your next turn. I still have to work on the language on these things. These are just rough scratches, but that's identical to the Ray of Frost cantrip. I'm borrowing from spells and different class features, maneuvers, and different things that already exist inside the D&D system, but I'm converting them into this martial mana system, and then also adding on a lot of stuff. Like, for example, Lifelink. Weapon deals +1 power die per mana burned, channeling this power. And again, this power, like Freezing. Weapon deals cold damage +1 power die per mana burned, channeling this power. Which you gain as temporary hit points that last until you finish a short or long rest. So, again, using a Warhammer, if you're using Lifelink, your Warhammer is going to do what? D12? It's going to do D12 bludgeoning damage, and it's a Lifelink is if you're, say, first level, then you're going to deal an additional D8 bludgeoning damage on top of it, and whatever that D8 roll is, that's how many temporary hit points you get. And of course, temporary hit points overlap, they don't stack. So every time you burn a point of mana using this ability, you can re-roll that D8, and if it has more temporary hit points than your current temporary hit point total, you increase it to that new amount. Like if you had 3 and you roll a 5, you now have 5 temporary hit points instead. So what's interesting though is, like, for example, you can stack these things. So if you are 7th level, like a 7th level Barbarian, for example, if you have both Lifelink and, say, Freezing Strike, if you spend 1 point, if you spend 1 Fury on Freezing Strike and you spend 1 Fury on Lifelink, you're doing freezing damage now. So you're doing +1 power die of freezing damage, and your enemy is going to have his movement halved for the round. So it's going to be your D12 from the hammer, and then D8 extra. So that's a D12 plus D8 damage. Lifelink, weapon deals +1 power die per mana burn, channeling this power. So we already have the damage converted to Freezing Strike because you're using Freezing Strike. So you're now using 2 mana between Lifelink and Freezing Strike. So you're now going to do 2d8 freezing damage and slow the enemy. But because you've only used 1 Fury to channel Lifelink, you're not going to get 2d8 worth of power dice. You're going to get 1d8. Choose the better one. So if you roll a 4 and a 7, you're going to do a total of an additional 11 plus hammer damage of freezing damage, but you're only going to get 7 temporary hit points. So when you're rolling these things, going back to the, give me a second here. This is actually really useful. Going back to the key, if we look at the mana flow chart, or the key, the elemental key flow chart. Here's you have your total key, you have your level, whether you're using elemental or magic or dichotomy paradigms, or just the normal universal magic paradigm. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is your max channel. So when you're putting in points, you have, I can take 1 point and I put it into Lifelink. I take 1 point and I'm putting it into freezing. So you're able to keep an eye using the mana playmats of how am I using my mana? What am I spending it on? And this is super easy because you can put the point down and then you can literally take your D8. You can take a D8 here and you can take a D8 here, or you can put like 1 point here and then you can put, and like say your third level, you put 2 points in Lifelink. You can put 1 point here for your freeze, and then you put your D8 here. And you got 2 and 3, both those points are spent on Lifelink. You would put both of your dice here on 3 so that you know that both of those dice are going to this 1 power, while that 1 die went to this 1 power. But if, like, say you spent all 3 points just on Lifelink, then you could put all 3 dice. Like, you literally set your dice on that 3 so you know how you're allocating your points. So it's a very visual system. This is you can load this into a VTT. It's already a part of the product when you buy the tap on tap burn, the elemental key. It comes with it, and it's also in a print, print friendly. It's black and white, so you can just print it and have it at your table, and you can just literally put your dice on it. So it's a mechanical, it's a physical thing you can interact with, so that you can manage your mana, like tapping mana, like with lands and stuff in MTG. It has that same ability. I've still got a little time left, so let's take a look at where we're at. Poisoning Strike, yeah. So that's kind of how that stuff works. Let's go up and look at the exploits. There's 30 exploits. I've got a number here. I'm tallying stuff. I think I'm actually up to 121 now. My goal is to get to 150 of them, with no less than 20 per category. The most of them are going to be in sustained. But sustain limits what you can do. It's like you choose to sustain something or not. If you're tapping something, you can still use exploits and you can still use strikes and reactions. It just means that you have to maintain concentration while having it sustained. But if you lock it, it reduces your max level. Sustained is identical to like casting a spell, in that you can have a spell cast and you can maintain concentration on it, and you can still throw fireballs and stuff while you do that. So it's very similar in that effect. But here's a ton of exploits that we built, and I'm having a hard time finding exploits that should be more than 2 mana. And that just might be the way that it is. You don't have to have abilities cost 5 mana because they're super good. You can limit what they do, and you can save super cool stuff for like sustained effects. So here's a list of some of the cool stuff that we can do. Adept Craftsman. You gain 1 power die to the roll on your check with a proficiency tool. So again, these are instant effects. You're making a check. You're using a tool that you're proficient with, like say Thieves' Picks. If a rogue is going to select a martial power and he's going to dive into exploits, you might want to take the Adept Craftsman, because then you can use your Thieves tools. If you're picking a lock or something, then at first level, your power die is a D8. You're proficient with the tool, so you're going to roll your D20. You're going to get your +2 die roll. You're going to get your dexterity modifier, which is probably going to be a +4 for a rogue, maybe +3. So you're up to a +6, and then you burn a point of mana. You only get 10 of them. So you burn a point of mana, and you get to roll a D8 and add that onto it. That is no different than a Bardic Inspiration, except that you're triggering it when, just like Smite, when you make the die roll. So it technically can stack with Inspiration, but so can Guidance. So all these things can stack, and that's fine. You're burning resources. Your goal as a DM is to not prevent someone from picking a lock. Your goal as a DM is to make it fun, and then let people burn their resources. There's such a confrontation among, like, this confrontation mindset that can exist at the table, where the DM is like, oh, I'm angry that you defeat my challenges. It's like, if they have to burn all of their spells and use up all of their features and stuff to beat the bad guy, and they beat the bad guy, you did a good job. Your job as a DM is to make them burn points, and everything in this martial powers book it encourages them to burn their points. Burn your points, burn them. If you wanna make sure you're gonna hit that lockpick, you might be down to only 2 mana, and you might need that for something that you're expecting to do. You might, I'm not gonna spend that. I think I've got a good shot at this. Well, you screwed up, so then you missed the roll. Ambush. I love ambush. On check, gain a power die to an ability check using stealth or rolling initiative. That's awesome. Practice charlatan. On check, gain power die to an ability check using deception, performance, or sleight of hand. Charge is an exploit, is a movement exploit. Charge. Move 10 feet towards an enemy, and when you do that, you spend your point, you move 10 feet towards your enemy, and then you gain plus your power die to both hit and damage. It's very similar to martial maneuver. It just functions differently. It's while I'm moving, I can spend the die, and then I move 10 feet towards that target, and when I get there, I get the plus power die to hit and damage. And then that can stack with any strike. So I use my power die. I'm at first level, or eventually I'm 18th level, and I roll a d12. I'm probably going to hit. And then since I hit, I can come down here to strikes, and I can then also spend points to amp up my damage so that I really hit him. I'm already getting the plus PD from the exploit to damage. Now I'm going to stack on the strike effect on top of it. But that's going to cost me 2 of my points, and a Barbarian only gets 10. So you can see you can burn through your stack really fast, which is great, because it's like, if you want to Nova, go ahead and Nova. You can't Nova. Using this system, you cannot Nova as hard as a Paladin can Nova out of the player's handbook, and you can't do it more frequently. Like, if I'm going to use Banishing Smite and use Divine Smite on the same attack, I'm going to do, at that level, I'm doing 4d10 damage from the Divine Smite, from the Vanishing Smite, and I'm doing 6d8 damage from Divine Smite. That's potentially 80 extra damage, assuming I didn't crit. So if I crit, of course, all of that mess is doubled, but that's an extra 8. You're probably doing 100 points of damage, right as written, straight from the player's handbook. This is not outscaling that. So the numbers they're fair. If you're using martial powers, you would replace Divine Smite with Smite Channel. And we'll talk about Paladins doing that another day. But it's just, the math is there. It's not more powerful than what the player's handbook opts in for you already. It's just doing things differently. and you know, it's a different approach, so it's fun. Let's see. Outwit. When an enemy takes a reaction against you that requires a roll to succeed, it's at disadvantage. So this is a circumstance when the D20 is rolled. It's your enemy that's rolling the D20, not you. But the exploit still stands. It's not an action. It's not a bonus action. It's not a reaction. It's just this thing happens. Second level stuff. First strike. When rolling initiative, if an enemy is within range, and that's going to be within like melee reach, or if you're using a thrown weapon, if you're within normal range of a thrown weapon, like 15, 20 feet. If an enemy is within range, use a reaction to make an attack roll against that enemy instead. So instead of rolling initiative, you're going to make an attack. The result of the roll is your initiative count, and you either hit or you don't. So that's just a fun little mechanic. I can see a rogue happily spending 2 points on that sort of thing, especially if you win initiative. If as a result of that you win initiative, then that means you have advantage. So if you hit, that means you get sneak attack on it. If you don't win initiative, you could still hit him anyway. You had to spend your reaction. Moving target. Whenever an enemy moves within range. Let's see. Oh yeah, these are. These are all reactions. So, moving target. When an enemy moves within range, even if involuntarily during your turn, you can use your reaction to attack at advantage. Again, a lot of advantage stuff being handed out to rogues. Let's go back to actions. Let's go back to exploits. Second level. Yeah. This is good. Speaking of distant attacks, where is it? Skilled, swift, ground, extended attack. Extended attack is a melee attack. Is specifically for melee. Your attack gains 5 foot reach, and you deal +5 a power die to hit. Precise attack, resilient, ground, field. Where is it? Hold on. Ambush, combat, tumbling, commanding presence, dive attack, empowered shot, ground fighting, flash, master, natural, precise, proselytizer, resilient, save, skilled, swift, tactical, veterinary, resilient, precise. Where did it go? Advantage. I know it's here somewhere. Hold on. Oh, empowered shot. Thank you. God. Empowered. So ranged. Gain advantage on normal ranged attack, and can use a strike power on hit. So thrown melee weapons. So there's melee weapons and there's ranged weapons. Bows, crossbows, slings. Those are ranged weapons. Melee weapons can always use this, even if they're thrown weapons. But if you want to use powers with ranged weapons, you have to have empowered shot. So it's a ranged. So that means that this affects a ranged attack. You gain advantage on your normal range attack, and can use a strike power on hit. It has to be within your normal range, and then you have down here you have far shot, which also qualifies for ranged. Attacking at long range is not at disadvantage, and you can use a strike at long range. So for 1 point, you can use a bow with martial, with like strike powers, for instance, within your normal range. I have to work on the wording. That's one of the things I still have to work on. That's why I have here. But then the far shot is I can even do this at long range, but I won't be at disadvantage, and I can use martial powers while doing so. So that's some of the gist. Let's look at some of the sustained powers. Looks like I'm just eating up all my time just walking through the mechanics. I'll end up putting this in a separate playlist. So when I have the opportunity in the future to come back and work on these mechanics, I can either do text cleanup on things that exist, or I can start filling in new things, new abilities like sustained powers. there's only 27-ish sustained powers that we have right now. Like, for example, quick assessment is gain proficiency or expertise in perception and intuition. This is a sustained power. So you spend 1 mana, you maintain concentration on it. And so while you're maintaining concentration, you gain proficiency with these 2 skills, or if you're already proficient, you gain expertise in them. And if you choose to lock them as a bonus action, you can use your intelligence or wisdom perception checks as a bonus action. So it's again, if you tap it and then you have to spend an action to untap it, and then you get the mana back. But if you lock it, then you automatically have to burn it, but you get a kicker effect that goes along with it. So, let's see what's some of the other fun stuff we got going on inside here. Steel skin, add proficiency bonus to your armor class. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. When you and when you're using color mana, you can only there's limits on when you can unlock unlock the mana and get that mana back. Let's see. It's mostly based on color. Like if you have, so if like sustained powers, if you devote sustained powers to white mana, you have to spend 1 white mana to activate the sustained power. But if it's a 3rd level sustained power, you have to spend a total of 3 mana, but only 1 of them has to be white. If you untap as a standard, if you use an action to untap it and you only spent 1 white mana, then you only get 1 mana back. You would automatically burn the other 2 points. If you aren't using a color mana or an elemental paradigm, then it all burns. You're gaining by using devotion and causing you to choose which colors you have access to. It gives you the ability to do this fun untap mechanic to regain mana. But under normal circumstances, it automatically burns. So, like if you're using universal points, it's like a generic spell point. It automatically burns. It's too powerful if you don't. But using the color magic paradigm, then you can see that listed in the elemental keybook. Like if you're going to use Burning Hands as like a 5th level, not Burning Hands as an instant ability, like Pass Without Trace as a green mana ability, as an elemental monk. It's a 2nd level ability, and it's green. So if you use 2 green mana, and while you're sustaining, if you untap it, you get the points back. If you use 1 green and you don't say you don't have enough green to do it, then you say use red instead, then you can still activate the ability. But when you untap it, you only get the 1 point of green back. So you are rewarded for having only 1 color mana, but you can't. The way it's built is that the different powers, the different studies of powers use different colors. So you can spend more. You can spend 2 powers to change its color. Like if strikes are normally red for you, and you want, and like say exploits are white. If you want all your strikes to be white, instead of spending 1 learned power, like you normally get say 3 at 1st level. If you want a strike and an exploit to both be white, you'd have to spend 2 of your powers on the strike for it to be white, and then the 1 point on exploits to be white. So you get 2 powers for the cost of 3. But now you have less options available to you, but you have you consolidated your mana costs, so you're only spending white mana. You're losing flexibility in options by gaining efficiency in your color pool. So that's how that works. But if you're using universal points, like just like generic spell points, like key or whatever, if you don't assign, like if you're only using color as like a narrative idea and not actual mechanics, then when you untap it, when you either untap or lock, it burns automatically. So let's look at some of the other sustained abilities here. I thought that was important to point out because it sounds pretty OP to be able to do this thing for like 1 round and then untap it and get all your mana back. Yeah, that would be OP. But if you're specifically building your mana pool and like you had to give up 2 abilities to be able to do that. Like, I'm not going to learn a strike because I'm going to choose to make this white and all I have is white mana. Then that actually is fair, because you are reducing the amount of abilities that you have so that when you use them, you can get your mana back. So it's a work in progress. I may modify that further, but that's how it sits currently. Quick assessment. Let's see, what's another one? Vigilance. These are all works in progress. So this is a melee thing. Any creature entering within melee reach takes a power die per mana. And that's automatic. So, and then, so like any time a creature, like Thicket of Blades, was a third, a martial, was one of the, Book of Nine Swords, what do they call that? The Martial Adepts, Book of Nine Swords. That was, Thicket of Blades was anytime anyone came close to you, they took damage. So Vigilance is similar. Vigilance, of course, is a term from Magic the Gathering. So any creature entering within melee reach takes a power die per mana. So the more mana you lock, the more power dice of damage that they're going to take. And if you lock it as a reaction to a creature entering your melee reach, spend mana, trigger a strike power up to your max level. So not only are they going to take damage from the thicket, but if you lock it when they enter your area as a reaction, you can then spend mana as though you had hit them. Like, and of course, like opportunity attacks, you can spend mana on strikes to deal damage. So like you could choose to do, say, Paralyzing Strike. It's +3 power dice to damage. And the target wisdom saving, the target either makes a wisdom saving throw or is paralyzed until save. And then at the end of each turn, it can also save. Kind of like Hold Person. So if you were using Vigilance and you locked Vigilance as a reaction when somebody came within reach, like you have the power active, and then when someone comes within range of you,